Right, g'day everyone. Welcome to Macbeth Act 2, Scene 2. So, we've just had the murder of Duncan. Now remember, we don't get to see the murder of Duncan. We get to see Macbeth just before he kills Duncan, and now we cut away and we see Lady Macbeth by herself. And she says, "That which hath made them drunk hath made me bold." So she's in the alcohol that everyone else is drunk, particularly the servants, made them drunk and fallen asleep, but she's encouraged by it and feels braver and more courageous. What hath quenched them hath given me fire. So what has quenched their thirst has excited her. Then she's, "Hark, peace, it was the owl that shrieked, the fatal bellman." So that's interesting. She's saying how bold and brave she is, but then she's sort of afraid of this sound in the night. And so I think that indicates that Lady Macbeth, she's deceptive to other people, but she's also deceiving herself. She is not as strong or as cruel as she thinks she is, and that's going to lead to her downfall. All right, so she goes on with this for a little moment, and then she hears Macbeth, who's there, what ho, he calls, but he's off stage at this moment. And then Lady Macbeth, she says, "I'm afraid they have waked, and 'tis not done. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark, I laid the daggers ready. He could not miss them. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it." And so she's saying she's worried that Macbeth hasn't done the deed, that he's backed out, and she says, "I would have done it, except he looked too much like her father as he slept." And so she chickened out, in essence. Then Macbeth enters with bloody daggers. And he's in shock right now. He says, "I have done the deed. Didst thou not hear a noise?" And she says, "I heard the owl." We go on like this for a little bit. And Macbeth looks at his hands. He's covered in blood. "This is a sorry sight," he says. He's disgusted with himself. The regret and the guilt is immediate for Macbeth. Lady Macbeth says, "A foolish thought to say a sorry sight." So he said, that's a silly thing to say. The grief and regret and guilt has not hit her yet, nor has the shock. And so Macbeth now tells us what happens. And he says there were Malcolm and Donalbain asleep together, and they spoke in their sleep. One cried, "God bless us," and "Amen" the other. And he says, "Listening their fear, I could not say Amen." So he tried to say Amen after they said, "God bless us," but he couldn't say Amen. And so to Macbeth and to Shakespeare's audience, if you are guilty and if you are on the side of the devil, you can't say a prayer and you can't say Amen at the end of it. That's an indicator of your guilt. But Lady Macbeth says, "Consider it not so deeply. Don't think about it too much." But he says, "But wherefore? Why? Why couldn't I pronounce? Why couldn't I say Amen?" And he really wanted God's blessing. He really needed to, but he couldn't do it. And then he goes on. Now we start getting into the guilt part. "Methought I heard a voice cry, 'Sleep no more. Macbeth does murder. Sleep, the innocent sleep.'" And so this is the beginning for both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth to experience the consequences of guilt. And for Macbeth, that means he can't sleep anymore. He says the innocent sleep, but he's not innocent, so he can't sleep. He's murdered sleep. And so he goes on. And then Lady Macbeth now notices that Macbeth has brought the daggers with him. And he wasn't supposed to. He was supposed to leave them with the servants and frame them. But in his shock, he's brought the daggers with him. And so Lady Macbeth accuses him, infirm of purpose, so he's not very assertive, a coward, which is quite a weird thing to say considering he's just murdered the king. He's done what she wants him to, and she was just afraid of an owl cawing just earlier, and couldn't kill Duncan herself. And she says, "Give me the daggers. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures," so they're nothing to be afraid of. And so she goes to return the daggers and frame them, leaving Macbeth by himself. Then there's some knocking. There's visitors, and this further unsettles Macbeth. And now we get the first mention of washing blood from your hands, and having blood on your hands as an indicator of guilt. And he says, "Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? All the water in the oceans? No. This my hand will rather the multitudinous sea in Carnadine, making the green one red." So the amount of guilt, the amount of blood on his hands is so much that that blood would turn the seas red. Then Lady Macbeth comes back and she says, "My hands are of your colour, but I shame to wear a heart so white." So she says, "Now I'm as guilty as you, but I'm not so weak and cowardly as you are." And so she's still attacking his masculinity at this point. And there's more knocking, and Macbeth says at the end, "Wake Duncan with thy knocking, I would thou couldst." And so he wishes that Duncan could wake up. But of course, we know Duncan can't because Macbeth murdered him. All right, that's it. Thank you.